I'm speechless. Or probably not. I am here today because I have this spectacular ability to transform my thoughts into sounds, which are then transformed into syllables, and then phrases, and then sentences. And that is why I am able to stand here today and express myself, tell you what I know, how I feel. I have this spectacular ability to speak, like you, and you. Oh, and most certainly you there. What wonderful brains do we have, right? Language is one of the most fascinating mysteries that scientists have been called to answer. Yet we often take it for granted. Here, I will need to make a small note that people who use sign languages do similar transformations as the one that I do, but instead of using sounds, they use body language and gestures. So, how many of you here feel confidence when you speak? Not many. Especially those of you who speak a dialect. How many of you here speak a dialect as a first language? Okay. Now, I would like to share an experience with you, a personal experience. In 2007, I found myself in Turkey. One day, while we were walking along a famous street, someone stopped us to ask us something, and then he wondered whether we were Turkish Cypriots. But we speak Greek. When I asked him why he would say that, he said, "You sound like a Turkish Cypriot." Few days later, the exact same thing happened, only this time, people were actually making fun of us. And they told us that they were sure we were Turkish Cypriots because of our funny and a bit villain accent. I was shocked. What kind of similarities could my Greek dialect share with a dialect from a totally different language? I didn't know. I had to find the answers. Was it because I was using the same words, or was it something else? So, right after coming back to Cyprus, I started researching in an effort to find an answer to these bizarre events. What I found out after a lot of research was that because of language contact, languages in the same geographical area, like the ones of Cyprus, tend to develop similar properties deviating from their original forms, and they have an effect on their intonation systems. Intonation means the rise and the fall of our voice as we speak, thus making them sound the same to non-speakers. There, I had my answers. And then it struck me. It was exactly at that moment that I knew what I wanted to do in my life. Well, I am a language teacher and I'm a linguist, which means that I study language, its theories, how it's formed, and how it evolves throughout the years, and how it transforms. Because whether we like it or not, languages change. And I am a social linguist, which means that I study how languages are perceived by speakers, and why men speak differently than women, and why we like or don't like certain languages. What I found out after all these years of researching, and I have discovered it, and it's a very surprising truth to me, is that I am not an expert in language. I work with experts, my students. The people around me are the experts, you. And this is because language is an inseparable part of our lives, and it's our only way to express our feelings, our thoughts, our fears. So, to make you understand more about what I study, I would like you to just sit back, relax, and imagine that right now you're at home, on your sofa, drinking a cup of coffee and relaxing. Suddenly, the phone rings. You answer it, and you find yourself speaking to a complete stranger on the other end of the line. What are your first thoughts and reactions while you listen to them? Yes, you want to hang up on them and go watch TV. Well, in matter of seconds or maybe minutes, you have a complete and detailed picture of how this person looks like and thinks about their personality. This is exactly what we linguists call language attitudes, and this is exactly what I study. I would like to start by using an example that we see in our everyday lives. Did you know that a child, once born, can actually distinguish all sounds of all languages, and their brains rehearse speech mechanics long before their first word. In the first year of their lives, they can actually produce sounds that do not only come from their home environment. Well, they sound a bit like this. So, how did you feel while you were listening to this sweet child of... Oh no, he's not mine. What I wanted to point out with using this example is that language attitudes are not something that's inherited. We don't bring it with us with our birth. It's a learned behavior, and it is based on stereotypical ideas. And babies don't have stereotypical ideas. But what about us? Stereotypes. My first language is Greek. Well, it's a dialect of Greek, as I said before. And I used to think that my language was the best. It was the most beautiful and the most eloquent. I used to think that it was the richest in terms of vocabulary structures, in terms of rhythm. And I used to think that it was the most superior. And I felt superior when I spoke to people who spoke other languages. I was so wrong. Right now, there are about 7,000 languages spoken around the world. And like humans, they're equal. Different in all sorts of ways, yet equal. And it's easy to understand why. I would like you to listen to this, since you are the experts of language.
بيتك يا مش هذكر مشتاق لك بحبك tęsknię za tobą kocham cię
Ja ciebie lubię.
Îmi este dor de tine, te iubesc.
nu se da așa găda
عاشقك وأفكر بيك.
lipsești un bicem te
Я скучал за тобой, я кохаю тебя.
باكو حساك جعلاي.
Language is such magic, isn't it? And it's got so much beauty in it. So all the voices you just heard just said the exact same thing. Πεθυμώσαι, αγαπώσαι, I miss you, I love you. Did it really matter which sounds or syllables they used in order to express this powerful feeling? Of course not. Well, why is it that some of you, and I could see it in your faces, may have understood some of the languages that you have learned, that you have heard, although you have never been taught in this language? And why do I feel that some languages sounded harsh and others so sweet or even romantic, like French, for example? Do you speak French there? Okay. Well, of course it has to do with experience and exposure to the language that makes us understand which languages we hear. It has to do with intelligibility and literacy. Most researchers agree that there is no such thing as an inherently beautiful or ugly language, and such judgments are based on stereotypes and they're based on ideologies and cultural norms. Of course, there are some researchers who believe that it is a matter of aesthetics too, and that we may have more pleasing languages based usually on the distinctive sounds that each language has. So, one might ask, how do we measure these attitudes, since it's something psychological and it's something individual? I would like you to listen to the following recording, and this time I would like you to differentiate between the dialect and the standard form of the language.
Vaktin zamanın birinde bir adam ırgat tutarmış. 3 tane de fukara kardeş varmış. Demişler, gidelim ve bu ırgatların yanına, belki bizi de alırlar. Orak biçerik, da 5-10 kuruş alırık.
Bir zamanlar bir adam yanında işçi çalıştırırmış. 3 yoksul kardeş varmış. Şu işçilerin yanına gidelim, belki bizi de işe alırlar, orak biçer, 5-10 kuruş kazanırız demişler. Gitmişler. Onlar da, ustamız şu an burada değil.
Now, while you were listening, I could see some reactions, and I'm sure that you know which was the dialect and which was the standard language, right? The first one was the dialect, of course. Now, what you don't know is that you have just taken part in one of the most famous experiments we use in sociolinguistics. It's called the matched guise experiment. In this experiment, people listen to apparently different voices of people speaking different languages. What they don't know is that 2 or maybe 3 voices actually belong to just one person. That's what happened to you earlier on. So judges, you, are asked to evaluate guises, the voices, based on certain criteria, certain characteristics, such as leadership, sense of humor, self-confidence, intelligence, kindness, even good looks. So we have many people coming to us in researchers and saying that they believe that dialects are bad languages and that they are inexpressive means of communication. Some of them even tell us that they feel ashamed when other people hear them speak. So that might explain why some parents usually and ridiculously force their children into speaking correctly. So this dialogue here between a mother and a daughter may be indicative of the situation. Mom, I want to go out with Travis. I want to. Mom, what about Dad? Your dad is good at grammar. And the answer is no. So, you need to ask yourselves, why do I think the way that I think? What factors influence my linguistic preferences? All studies around the world, and they have been made for decades now, have indicated the exact same thing, that certain languages, usually dialects, are stigmatized for certain reasons, usually sociopolitical ones, economic ones, even psychological ones, and others enjoy prestige and status due to ethnic identity issues and usually cultural norms. So, why are such attitudes so important, not only to you, but to your children, to our communities, to the future of our education? And now that I said education, I would like to use an example that we often see in primary schools in Cyprus. But I'm sure that similar examples can be found anywhere in the world, especially where dialectal students attend. How many of you remember how frustrated you were at school when you had to write something? Usually they asked us to write stories, and you just couldn't find the words. The only thing that came to your mind were the words from your mother tongue. So instead of writing something like «παρολίγο να πεθάνω», which translates into «I almost died», the only thing that comes to your mind and you finally write it down is «χαζίρι να πεθάνω». And then you have all these comments with a red pen by the teacher. So the problem that I see here over and over is that people take the negative attitudes that they have developed at school concerning languages and the ones that they have developed in their home environment. And unfortunately, they bring it into their adult lives and into their work and into their relationships. How we educate our children at home and what we do in schools is extremely important. We need to take all linguistic varieties of each and every student into consideration. And so, the findings that we have from language attitude studies are really important, not only to us as language teachers, but to you as parents, and most importantly, to policymakers, because they are the ones that make the decisions. Because what is a language, after all? A dialect. A dialect is just a language, but without an army and a navy. So, we cannot easily transform our languages or the way that we speak. What we can do, though, is transformation of perceptions. 10 years later, more than 10 years later, I feel more confident in using my mother tongue, not only at home, but in formal settings as well. In being more tolerant towards people that speak differently than I do, that I have a different style, because everyone has a different style, and in being a better teacher. So, what's one thing you can do starting today, starting now? Stop feeling judged about the linguistic variety that you use and how you use it. Remember that how you speak often determines who you are and how people treat you. So take advantage of it, make the most of it. Because if language is power, then feeling confidence in using it is a superpower. And after all this, I'm starting to feel a bit like a language expert again. Thank you.